Welcome to Garden Delights. I'm Susan Howington, Family Consumer Science Agent with the Henry County Cooperative Extension, partnership with the University of Georgia. Today we have a great show for you. We're going to talk about squash. We're going to invite Frank Hancock, our Agriculture and Natural Resource Agent, back. He's going to talk a little bit about squash and the gardening. And then we're going to come back after that and we'll do a little bit of a recipe called grilled vegetable packets. We'll see you in just a little bit. Welcome back to Garden Delights. This is what we call the crookneck squash, and it's probably one of my favorite squash as far as eating in the summertime, and it comes in in abundance. So be ready to know what to do with it once it comes in. And my other favorite squash is zucchini squash, and it makes different things that you can do with zucchini. So we're going to talk a little bit about the benefits of both of them, which are squash, and they're summer squashes. The good thing about squash, it's saturated fat free. It is sodium free. It is very high in vitamin C, iron. It's good in calcium. The best thing you can remember though is to keep the skin on when you're using your squash, because you're going to get the best nutrients when you can leave the skin on. So let's talk about selecting squash. You want to look for squash that has not had any indentation as far as bruises. You want it to be firm. You want it to be glossy, so it looks like it's really fresh, and that's what you're looking for. Now, this is a good size for squash. If you're buying squash or if you're picking it from your garden, you don't want it to get too big. The texture on the outside is tougher, and also the seeds on the inside sometimes become very tough. So just remember, when you're picking your squash, pick it on the medium size, small size. And when it comes in, be ready, because it's going to come in really quick. And if you're not ready, you're going to have to figure out a way to prolong it fast. So we're going to take this once we pick it, and you're going to put it in your refrigerator, and you can keep it in your refrigerator for about 2 to 3 days. After that, if you're not going to eat it, you can freeze it. But you do have to water blanch it, because we want to make sure it's safe for you, so you do water blanch it. You can cut it into cubes, you can cut it in slices, and what you're going to do is put it into boiling water. You're going to blanch it for about 3 minutes, and then after that you're going to put this into ice water to stop the cooking method. That will prolong it. It can stay in your freezer for about 6 months. Every month after that, the quality of that food is not going to be as good. So you just want to remember that. I like to also put dates on it, so I know when I put that squash in there. So you want to use your old squash when you put new in, so try to take it out. Squash is like a blotter, so it's going to soak up water. So you want to make sure you get it out of that water as fast as you can when you do freeze it. That's a little bit about our squash, the good things about squash. We'll see you back in just a little bit.
Squash likes well fertile soil, lots of organic matter, well drained soil, pH of around 6, 6.5. They're like the soil to be warm, in that 60, 65 degree range. We're going to plant them in a hill. The hills are going to be about 4 feet apart on our summer squash. On our winter squash, though, we may move that to 6 or 8 feet apart, because the winter squash are going to run a whole lot more than the summer squash do. We're going to plant 4 or 5 seeds in each hill, and as they come up, we're going to pick the 2 or 3 best ones, and we'll take the others out, so we get a really good plant growing in our hill. And then as they grow and start to mature, they'll start blooming. And when they bloom, squash have male and female flowers. The female flower, if you look at it, has a little squash behind it. You can tell the difference really easy between the male and the female. They've got to be pollinated by the bees, and if you don't have a good population of bees in your garden, then you may lose some of the pollination, in which cases you may have to hand pollinate them, which you can pick off a male plant and pollinate a female plant. You can take a Q-tip and you can dab it in the male plant and pollinate the female plant with it, just to make sure you get good pollination so you're growing really good squash plants. In the next segment, we're going to talk about some of the problems you encounter with insect pressure on the squash plants. Squash is a favorite of a lot of people. Squash can have some problems growing around here because of some of the pests that it has, squash vine borers and squash bugs. This is some zucchini squash that's been set out here as transplants. And zucchini is a good summertime squash. Also your yellow summer squash that you grow. The problem with these two squashes is they have big stems, and the vine borers like the squash that have the big wide stems. Vine borers start off in the ground. They pupate. There's a little cocoon about 5/8 of an inch long, little dark colored, silky looking cocoon that the adult hatches out of. The adult will hatch out sometime in late May. It depends on the weather. We talk about 1,000-degree days, that sort of thing. You don't have to understand that, but you can look up the degree day on the Georgia Environmental Weather site that we have talked about in the past. Right now today, this is like in mid-April here when we're doing this, and so we're about 384 degree days into the season. You start looking for squash vine borer adults at about 950, and then at 1,000 they're going to hatch out. You don't ever know when that is because that's all dependent on the weather. You can also monitor for them when they hatch out. There are traps, there are moth traps. They're attracted to yellow. Sometimes a little yellow bowl of water will attract them. But as soon as you start seeing the adults, then you know they're going to start laying eggs. And those eggs are going to be laid down at the base of the stem. They're usually singular eggs, different from a squash bug that lays their eggs in clusters. The vine borer lays his eggs sort of as individual eggs, and you'll see them as little brown specks down on the stem and down close to the ground. When they hatch out, the larva will then immediately bore into the stem. But backing up just a minute to talk more about the adult works in the daytime. It's a bright, pretty little moth. It looks kind of like a wasp. A lot of people might confuse it with a wasp with black and red on its abdomen. It flies in the daytime, and it flies really good. I've had people try to catch them with nets and that sort of thing, and they're really hard to catch up with because they're really good flyers. So if you want to try to capture them that way, you need to do it real late in the evening. In the evening, they'll settle down on the top of the leaves and top of the stem, and give you a better shot at capturing them if you're trying to get rid of them that way. But anyway, once they lay their eggs and you start monitoring, you will see these little brown specks. You can take some water and a rag, and you can wipe the stems off. You can just wipe those eggs off. If you've got a small patch and you're trying to protect it, when you see those eggs, just wipe them off. Same thing with squash bugs. You see the eggs on the bottom of the leaves, you just wipe them off and crush them, and that'll get rid of them. But once the eggs hatch, then the borer goes into the plant immediately. So they're very hard to control chemically because they're protected. They're protected when they're in the cocoon. Then you got the eggs, if you don't do anything about the eggs, and then once they hatch out of the eggs, they bore into the plant, and again, you can't control them. Now, some people will take things like BT, dipel, and they'll actually inject the base of the plant with it. You can try to grow you like a little buckwheat alongside the garden that will attract some of these little tachinid flies, these little wasps that lay eggs on on the larva and kill them that way. But wiping the plant off is a good project for taking care of them organically. And then you can also spray with insecticidal soap. Spray it down towards the base of the plant to try to control those insects at the base of the plant. You can also take like nylon stocking material, and you can wrap it around the base of the plant to keep the eggs from getting on the plant, and that will control that. Some people use little pieces of cardboard around the base of the plant. It's easy to do when you're doing transplants because you can wrap it around. You want to go down about a ½ inch below the soil surface, and that prevents these eggs from getting down there at the base of the plant, which is where they're deposited for the most part. Once the larva gets in, he will feed there for about a month, and he will cause that plant to wilt, just like overnight. The plant will look really good this evening, and tomorrow it'll just look like it's totally dying. So you want to monitor that. You can take your knife and slit the stem long ways, find the little worm and get him out and kill him, and throw some dirt back over the plant, and you can save the plant if you're diligent at doing that. But if he kills the plant, you don't want to throw the plant, you don't want to pull it up and just throw it over here in the pile. Anytime a vine borer kills a plant, you need to take the plant up and you need to dig the vine borers out of it and kill them, because they're going to go back in the ground, they're going to pupate, and the process is going to start all over. So don't ever let them go back into the ground once you have a problem. You can also, once they go back in the ground, you can take your hoe and you can dig around about 1 inch deep in the area where they have been, and you can find those little cocoons that they put in the ground. So your timing is very critical, that you start working at the egg stage when they're flying, because they will kill your plant, and they do it in a hurry. Squash bugs, on the other hand, they're harmful, both in the larva stage and the adult stage. They overwinter in debris, in organic material, and so they stay alive all winter. So the population is somewhat dependent on how bad a winter you might have had, and so they get on the leaves. You can see them. They're a little easier to control because you can take a can of soapy water and you can knock them off of the plant and get rid of them that way. So I'm telling you these things, that there are chemicals that will control these things, but we're trying to talk a little bit about doing it organically here. So we'll talk about the organic methods like the BT. Pyganic is another pyrethrin that can be used to knock down squash bugs. Also can be sprayed along the base of the plant. And that's about all I know about squash.
We're going to talk about that grilled vegetable packets, and I'm going to tell you how to put it together. It's very simple. You take 2 zucchinis, which we have up here. We have 2 squash, and they're about medium sized for both of these. You take 4 of the small potatoes, because you want to make sure they can get done in the frame that you want to get done. It also has a 1/2 of a bell pepper, 1/2 of an onion, and then what here in this little container is 1/4 of a cup of our salad dressing, Italian salad dressing, and it's a light salad dressing. So what we're going to do is I'm going to cut all this up, put it in a bowl. I'm going to marinate it with a little bit of the salad dressing, and then I'm going to form these little packets with foil. Now, if it's really hot, I'm always looking for a way to cook outside. So grilling is my favorite, but we're going to cook it in the oven, and if you're going to cook it in the oven, you need to preheat your oven to 400 degrees. And that's going to be for about 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how you like your vegetables. Now, if you like a little crunch to them, you may not want to go as long. But I know my husband, he doesn't like mushy squash. He will eat it only if it's firm. So I'm going to go ahead and cut up the zucchini, and I'm going to tell you it's going to be a little different from the way I do the yellow squash. In the recipe, it's going to tell you for the zucchini to cut it up into chunks. Notice that I am leaving the skin on. So I'm going to cut the zucchini up first. What I'm going to do is just half both of them. This makes it easier for me to handle. And then I'm going to do it one more time, so I'm going to quarter just about each half, and that's going to make some nice chunk size, and that's what we're looking for on the zucchini. Now you can cut it any way you want to, but the recipe, when you see it on the website later, it is going to tell you to cut it into chunks. So you can do it however you want to do it. This just gives the recipe a little bit different look than having all the squash cut the same way, so that's the reason why I'm going to do it this way. So all I'm going to do is make some small little chunk size with the zucchini, and then I'm going to add this little part to the bowl, and then I'm going to keep cutting till I get all this cut up. Let me move my spoon out. I'm going to cut a little bit more up. So you want to use all this. And this is going to be really tasty. And also, it's very colorful, and that's what I like about this. It's adds good color, and you're getting a little bit of texture. And you're leaving the skin on, which is going to get the best as far as the nutrients go. So I'm going to go ahead and add all this into the bowl. Cut up just a little bit more pieces off of this end. And you can see that's too medium, and you can just see from the bowl that that's already a lot of zucchini. And this recipe will serve about 5 people, really depending on how much they eat. So if they eat a lot, you might not have enough for 5 people. So you might have to double this. I'm just cutting off the ends of the squash right now, the yellow squash. And I'm going to do it a little bit different on the cutting. I am going to cut it into circles. So in slices, I guess you would say. So we're just going to take this and cut it into slices. And just remember what I said, the larger you get on your squash, then you're going to be able to see the seeds. It's also going to be tougher. So just remember that when you're getting ready to prepare this meal, try to get the medium size. So we have squash, get that one. I'm going to add it to the bowl. We'll do one more squash. Very easy to do. I like this recipe because it is easy. I don't know about you, but when I come home, I'm ready to do things that are quick and easy. And I love to grill out, so to me, this is just a fun thing to do. If you don't want to heat your kitchen up, is to grill it out. Okay, so we've got 2 of the squash in now. All right, and a half of a red onion. If you don't like red ones, you can always go with the white ones. So just remember that all of them are versatile. So this is a half of an onion. I'm just going to slice it. I like the wedge kind of look to give a little bit more different texture to it, a little different look to the recipe. So we're going to add the onion. If you don't like onion, you know, you don't have to put it in. In my family, we like onion. So, and to me, you just can't beat the taste of onion when it's cooking. It just smells so good. It makes me think about when I go to festivals or carnival places like that, and when they're cooking the onions, it just smells so good. It makes you want to go find out where it's coming from. So what I'm doing now is just trying to split the onions up so that they're not stuck together, so we can get the onion taste all through the meal. So I'm going to add some more. And you can see this is already looking good. It's just for color right now before we even cook it. Okay, in the recipe, I said it calls for 4 small potatoes. So in other words, you want to use something in this range because you're trying to cook all this at one time, and you want to make sure that it's cooking and you have all the ingredients in this to where they're tender and they're all evenly cooked. If you cook it, if you have larger ones, it's going to take it longer, and when you do that, then your squash has a possibility of overcooking. But if you like softer squash, that's okay too. So we're just adding the potatoes. And everything that I have in front of me has been already washed. So that's very important when you're working with your vegetables and your fruits, is to remember that they need to all be washed. All right, I have 2 more to go. Just slicing these up. Going to end up kind of tossing it around just a second. Kind of get an idea of what it really looks like. But if you can see, this is very easy to do. So if you're in a pickle and you need something really quick to impress everybody coming over to your house, this is a great recipe to do. Now I'm just going to half this red pepper. And also it does tell you to take the seeds out, so you want to make sure you take the seeds out. So what I'm going to do is pop this end off. Try to keep the seeds hopefully from to this end of the cutting board. I'm going to take a little bit of the inside out. And I'm going to, if I don't have all the seeds, I'm going to use my paper towel, but I think I have most of it up. I'm just going to rake this to the side a little bit. And what I like to do on the peppers, I like to cut it one time in half because it just makes it easier for me to handle. And again, you can slice it any way you want to. It just says slice. It doesn't really tell you exactly how to slice it on the recipe, so it's your preference on how you want to slice your peppers. And I'm just, again, just slicing these in small little webs, little strips. So I'm just going to add that to it. And if you don't like pepper, you know, you don't have to use pepper, but it does add to the recipe, and it definitely adds to the flavor of all this mixing together when it's all cooked too. Got one more to slice. Okay, I'm going to mix that in with this. And our last thing that we do, I'm not going to add any salt and pepper to this because when you add the salt, it brings out the water content of that squash, so it can make it very watery. So we're going to keep from doing that. What you want to do is add the salt and pepper to taste after the after this is cooked in the oven. So remember, it's going to cook up 400, and your grill usually gets about 400 when your lid is down. So that's the reason why they're saying about 400. Same thing what I'm going to do for the oven also. What I'm doing now is adding that 1/4 cup of the light Italian dressing. And just about everybody keeps Italian dressing on your shelf at home. But if you have another favorite type of dressing, you can always use that too. All right, I think I got most of that. And what I'm going to do is just toss this to make sure I get a little bit of that dressing on it. And it's just going to flavor it up. A 1/2 cup of squash is about 25 calories. So you can see that it's fat-free, very, very low in calories. So I'll just kind of mix this up. And what I'm going to do is show you how to do those packets now. And I'm actually going to put the packets in the oven to cook, just like I was going to cook if I was on the grill. So I think I've got this mixed up really good. And I'm going to just scoot this aside with my trash and see if I can work this up here so you can kind of see how the packets are going to go. I have foil already cut into small pieces, and you need 4 pieces. What we're going to do is we're going to put a little bit of the, you have to do it in 2 increments. You don't want to put it all together because it needs to be flat out in that foil. If you do it all together, I would advise you to put it into a casserole dish if you're going to cook it that way. We're going to do it in small increments because that way it cooks a little bit faster and you have a meal a lot faster. So what we're going to do, and I do have a little bit of heavy duty foil, so I'm just going to rake a little bit out onto the foil. We'll try to get about half of this. Sometimes I feel like I'll have to make sure I get enough potatoes on each one and onions on each one because I want to make sure each one is flavored very well. Okay, and I'm just going to pull from the bottom right now. And what you do, I'll just lay this right here, is you take this other piece, you're going to lay it on top of that vegetable, and you're going to fold up the sides of it on all 4 sides. Very, very simple. So if you're trying to cook out and you're trying to look for something quick to do also, this is very, very easy. So I have one packet ready, and what I try to do is I just kind of shake it a little bit to make sure the vegetables kind of dispersed out evenly. I'm going to do the same thing to this other half. So I'm going to move this up front. So we're going to dump this into the foil. And I want to get every bit of it in here because it's really, really good. All right, then I'm going to take a piece of that foil from behind. And I'm going to lay this on top and do the same thing. It's going to fold up the sides. And this just keeps it from leaking out. It's going to keep it really tight to where it kind of steams the vegetable. And that's what you want to do. Some people like to boil their squash and make different things. I personally love to just steam it. I can even take it straight out of the garden, put a little onion in it, do a little stir fry with it, and really enjoy squash. So I'm just going to shake this again, make sure it's even out. And then you have 2 packets now. We're going to put this in the oven at 400, and it's going to cook for 15 to 20 minutes. And if you want to cook it longer, you can. But try it after about 20 minutes and see if it's at the tenderness that you want your vegetables, and it should be ready to go. I'll see you just in a little bit. We have Frank with us. We're getting ready to taste that grilled vegetable packets. I have them out of the oven. I will tell you that even if you bring them out of the oven or the grill, you want to make sure that you release the steam off of it. So if sometimes they will tell you to do that, to poke holes with your fork. So I'm just going to poke a little bit just to make sure I don't have any steam, because you don't want it to burn you. What I'm going to do is just take one of these packets out so Frank and I can taste it. And I'm going to see if I can just kind of slide it into this casserole dish without hopefully hitting anything as far as the floor, and see how easy it's going to come out, Frank. And you can see the steam already coming out. So we're going to dump this out. Hopefully it's going to come right out. Majority of it is. Let's see if I got any more left. Yes, I do. I got to get the potatoes. That's one of my favorite things.
Don't leave any in there.
All right, let's see if we can just, and see how easy this is too. Think about this. I don't know about you, but I'm always looking for an easy way not to have to wash dishes. So that's one good thing. And you also don't, if you're doing it on the grill, you're not messing your grill up a whole lot.
I'll take care of the dishes.
You'll take care of the dishes? Okay, that sounds really good. So Frank, we're going to try this and see what you think about it. I'm going to give you a little bit of squash, a little bit of potatoes, zucchini also. I want to make sure I give you a little bit of onions. All right, and here is your fork.
Okay.
Let's see what it tastes like. So what do you think?
That reminds you that it's worth the trouble to grow some squash.
I believe you're right.
Very good.
Well, hopefully you'll try this recipe. It's going to be on the website to tell you exactly what to do for this recipe. It's very easy, as you can see. I've got to take my first bite too, Frank.
All right.
Very good.
Now, of course, I guess if they just don't want to grow any squash, they could come out to the farmer's market and get some fresh squash.
Now, that would be a good idea.
And if they do, I'll get the grill out.
There you go. So maybe you might see me at the farmer's market grilling this next time instead of in the oven. Hey, we'll see you next time on Garden of Lights.